Greetings. My name is Michael Miller. This is the Michael Miller trademark training video. Out to you because you're watching. Welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Core New Core, and anyone interested in surviving as a Pilates instructor. Mondays are always hard because it's 3 days of notes, and I'm not doing a very good job of synthesizing them. So let me just number one is sign language, and I've been opening the broadcast recently with acknowledging new friends that speak other languages. And so sign language ended up being a means for me as an instructor to say key things about Pilates from sign language. And so this is gravity, right? Gravity, it's heavy. My hands start here and, you know, gravity, gravity. Gravity forces, like I'm pushing or forces the issue of alignment. Alignment is sensational via, like you're walking along a road, via tension that happens between points, between 2 points, that makes alignment sensational and triggers uniform engagement. See what I mean? So I want to just go into a bunch of it, but the sign language is on my website, hermit.com, and I encourage you to learn whatever you have to say that you feel is important in sign language. There's great books and courses and signers out there to help you. Number two, there's the way you see things, and then there's reality. I only say that as a reminder to myself that the same is true for everyone, is that human beings make a simulation of what's out there, of reality, and their simulation of it and what's real are two different things. Often you can run into an attitude that someone's view of things is reality, and that's all there is to it. Well, everyone has their view of things, like their view of reality, and then there's reality itself, which humanity is doing its best to understand and deal with and survive and feel joy and prosper and make the most of the life that you're in control of. If we're talking about contrology and being an instructor, and what do you after? We're after control. Which takes me to number three. I was tossed a quote, and the quote is that the body achieves what the mind believes. And my comment on that, my response to that is, here, where is it? I have my notes. By saying that the body achieves what the mind believes, I have problems with that. For the first and foremost, it places the result within the mind, as though the mind determines what to be achieved, and the body will achieve whatever the mind believes. And that's the second thing. It implies, well, first of all, it's a misplaced emphasis on the mind and the relationship it has to the body. And then it implies that whatever you believe is all that matters, and that belief is arbitrary. That belief is arbitrary. And by that I mean that reality doesn't matter, it's just what you believe that matters, is what the saying is saying to me. And I would take exception to that, because there's reality, and so much happens based on what you believe about reality and yourself in it, the whole experience. But presuming or placing the emphasis on the mind believing, or see, that's why I'm still on number 3. It's too much focus on the mind and places an emphasis and a superiority of the mind domineering over the body, and that whatever the mind believes the body will achieve. Well, yes, that's true. And yet, for me as a Pilates instructor that's so focused on coordinating 3 capacities within the human being, for me, I would want to talk about what the human being achieves in body, mind, and spirit. It's too esoteric to go into a broadcast and not have an interchange about, but to me it overemphasizes the mind, subjugates the body to the mind, and completely ignores the necessity of the observer, or the presence of the observer or observing as a capacity within the human being that influences what is achieved. Number four, being observed versus being loved. I on occasion write to someone on the day after their birthday to acknowledge that they're still out there, and it's the day after their birthday, and that it's like, where did all that attention go? And my comment is about being observed versus being loved, because she said no worries, and she feels loved, and that's a great place to come from. But my point would be that I wasn't talking about feeling loved as much as the feeling of being observed, right? And, the feeling of being observed. And so it's one thing to be loved, and I'm not talking about that when I'm talking about the poignant absence of the observation you're under on your birthday, right? And a lot of that comes with love, and all of it maybe comes from love. If you were in a performance on stage, it's the difference between being on stage and performing and being observed versus not being on stage and not being observed in that way. Okay. Number five. God, I think really the Pilates culture is hopeless. Almost. Because if it were hopeless, I wouldn't do this. But the popular spine crusher on the push-through bar. It's popular because it's visually dramatic. It's popular because it's challenging, and for whatever other reason you want to attach to why it's popular, but I see it a lot in a lot of different places, expressing seated at the push-through bar, curling under into a hip press, lifting the hips up in the air, and being supported in the air from your grasp on the push-through bar while your feet are pressing against the poles holding up the Cadillac, and you're in an arch. It's compressive. It's compressive. And I know it takes advanced capability to do the exercise, and you can go right off and saying, well, this is where we go in doing difficult things. I take exception to it in that, to me, it's compressive in a way that is nowhere to be seen in the rest of Joe's work, Joe's original work. So in his pictures, all his exercises, all his film that I have access to, and surely if you have access to film that I don't have, I'd love to see it. My point would be that in Clara, where it is that Clara X'd out the headstands on the reformer because she thought they were too dangerous. And rightly so, and understandably, in many studios that I visited, those were exercises that were not done, were not taught, were not shown, right? And yet they are part of Joe's original work. In this case, I'm not saying that, and I don't know that, and I don't think that the spine crusher on the push-through bar was an original exercise by Joe. I don't think Joe taught that to any of his students. Maybe they did. And if they did, it would stand out to me, here's what my point is, it would stand out to me as distinctively outside of the decompressive nature of the bulk of his work. And so in the headstands, you could say, well, you wouldn't do the headstands unless you're capable of being engaged dynamically in order to do it, and that's true. And you certainly wouldn't do the spine crusher on the push-through bar unless you were capable of not getting your spine crushed. But the leverage involved is right at that threshold where you go off into another modality that employs leverage a lot. The spine crusher on the push-through bar, because of its compressive nature, seems so out of place to me and so misrepresentative of Pilates, because you look at it and if you have a body and not even being in it, but especially when you've done it, you know the complexity of the exercise, and you know the connection that it takes to do it without crushing your spine. And yet to me, it highlights the complexity required to avoid what seems obvious as compression. And so that's me venting on that and doing it with you instead of having to try to point it out to anybody else who could care less. But from the MM point of view, eccentric means away from center, and it's decompressive. And it's tough to see how that exercise and all the rest, how that exercise fits into dynamically the expression of the mass body of Joe's work that all shows decompression in its effort. It shows elongation, eccentricity. Number 6. So I actually shared on my Facebook timeline a belt that you can put on that helps hold your shoulders back. And my comment to that is, would you rather wear the belt on the outside or the image on the inside? See, they're selling a belt that's meant to help you be in a posture that if you were aware of core new tension and knew how to engage in that image, you would wear the belt from the imagination on the inside and not use a belt on the outside. Just like the thing behind your shoulder blades that's meant to help you sit up straight. If you want something more than some kind of a feedback mechanism that you're not standing up straight, if you want to be able to engage in proper posture and have a sensation come off of it because of the tension you create with it between endpoints. So number 6, do you want to wear it on the outside or wear it on the inside? Number 7, it's human nature to try and shoehorn reality. Reality is whatever you can make of it, that reality lets you get away with. I like that. Reality is whatever you make of it, with whatever reality will allow you to make of it. So, human nature is to want to make reality whatever they want, and that's what we do, and it's a joyous thing, can be, and participating in life when it comes to our fitness or the way we hold our body and our posture, or the way we even teach Pilates or look at Pilates, is all a matter of what we want or how we try to shoehorn reality into what we'd like it to be. For MMP, doing Pilates is a plunge, a dive into an expression of an ideal. And that's human nature too, as a way of trying to shoehorn reality and for whatever reality is, and for all of the 10,000 views of what reality is. And recognizing that we all seek to make our reality match reality, our simulation of reality match reality. That's the whole survival test, right? Number 8 is that it's comforting to be consistent in character. So consistency is comforting. And even if someone still thinks that still thinks of you in a particular way, it's at least consistent if they still think of you in the same way, right? Which can be a good sign. So I started with sign. You know that this gripping thing, this gripping motion, is a word for control. Control. Contrology is complete coordination of body, of mind, and of spirit, right? And the sign for spirit is a lightning bolt coming into view. It's the sign for spirit, as I take it to mean, is that this pre-existed and comes into your observation, right? It's observable. You can see it. Body, mind, and spirit. Uniform, eccentric, loading. We're talking about gravity there, right? Gravity, loading. Flowing through. There's flowing through, that's for through. Progressive. Ideally, those steps run up from your observer's left to right if you're speaking to an observer that is in English writing from left to right. And your pattern would be different if the writing were coming from the other direction to match the progression of words and writing to the progressive pattern we're talking about in Pilates. Everybody's so happy with what they already know. All right, I'm about to do this. You're my one observer in YouTube. Probably somebody that likes what they're listening to. I hope I'm making sense, because that's the Michael Miller saying mark, is that Michael Miller Pilates makes sense. And we covered sign language, and sign language makes sense before words of any other language, because of the observation of movement and the meaning attached to the movement. Similar to Pilates, wouldn't you say? All right, let me see if I can synthesize this and say less and mean more in the Facebook broadcast to come. Thank you for listening. Life can't live forever. Read between the lines. See behind the curtain. Add 2 and 2. Direct your thinking. Oh yeah. Geist.